Hey all, Scott here from Art of the Genre, and today we were going back to take a look at a classic module. That would be S3, Expedition to the Barrier Peaks. Actually played this module 3 times in my life. Twice I played it as a player, once in the early 80s, probably, I mean, not early 80s, probably like 86, 87, and then I think I played it again probably in 1989. And finally, I ran it as a DM myself. It had been in my collection for years. I ran it just this summer. So I got to take a, kind of a firsthand knowledge of it as a DM and do my notes on it. Which were pretty interesting. The module was created for Origins 2. It's a tournament module. It was created by Gygax and then reprinted in 1980-81. And it's hard for me to understand how this could be properly played as a tournament module because I know you could hand out characters and stuff, but it's a crazy one and it's super large. It actually has 2 interior booklets. One is actually just illustrations, which is fine, but the other one will go into the, I guess detail is a bad word for me for this module because I don't feel like there is a lot of detail. There's a lot of information, but not a lot of detail, and those are the things that you've got to make up yourself as a DM to kind of give you flair and flavor for what this module is. You're gonna have to put in a lot of work on it. I think I did. As you can see here, these are just pages and pages and pages of printed notes. If anybody wants these notes, they're for my campaign specifically, but you can always email me. I'll put my email down in the comments. If you guys want this, they could be chock full of spelling errors or whatever, but they are there. So if you want them, you could have them. But it kind of takes you through what I had to wrap my head around in dealing with this module. The artwork, the cover artwork, is done by Errol Otis, and he also does some interior artwork. Probably the most famous would be the Froghemoth, which you can see here. That's a great picture, and I think the Froghemoth is one of those creatures that a lot of old players know, and I got to use kind of several times in this one. Very cool just to kind of see it come to life. Also, interior artwork is done by Jim Rosloff. And then there's going to be a lot of interior artwork that is also done by the incredible Jeff D. And as you can see, those 2 pictures there really sing to me of D's. And he's got a lot in here. I'm going to show you some more later. But the first one of those is going to be the challenge for the 2nd level of the dungeon, the ship, which is the Intellect Devourer. It is incredibly difficult to kill in first edition AD&D. As my players found out, it actually ate the brain of a couple people and took their place. So it's hard, and that's something to keep in mind in this one. I remember the first time I played it, I was playing with a high-level magic user, and he just threw a power word kill on it, and that was it. But typically, you're not going to find stuff like that. That would have been like the high-level gaming you do when you're very young. Anyway, that's tough. And then the second picture that I showed you back there would be the Mind Flare. In the notes that I did, it's got the Jeff has the Mind Flare like attacking somebody in the party. But what I did, I had an evil party that I had put into the module. And then the various bodies that you found in the module were members of that evil party that were found there adventuring. And this Mind Flare happened to be the last one. A couple of his buddies got locked up in the lockup by the androids or the robots there, and they died because the food dispensers didn't work, even though the robots had locked them up and thought they'd be taken care of, but the ship's computers are bad. So he's the only one left. And it really made an interesting part of this module for me because very rarely are you going to get to run with a companion who is a Mind Flayer. And by the end of it, although the Mind Flayer did get killed by the Intellect Devourer, in my campaign, the people, the characters loved it, and it was like a party member had died, even though at some point in the end, the mind player would have probably betrayed them and tried to eat somebody's brain. But nevertheless, he was a very fun character to do. You know, when you're role playing it or NPCing it, you know, I did the thing with like the tentacles, you know, and every time he'd talk, you know, it was kind of like Cthulhu was talking to you. So anyway, it was very fun, and that's a great NPC that you could put in as well. He's got his jumpsuit on, and he's kind of learned a little bit of the ship that you might not have. So those are some cool things that were in it for me dealing with the artwork. Diesel also has a couple pieces in there as well. And one thing that I don't like about the illustrations with the module are the detailings of weaponry, specifically lasers in the module. I hate them. I hate the way they were drawn. And I just went through online and grabbed some pictures of laser blasters and stuff like that that I liked, and then provided those as visual copies for my players. I would suggest you do the same unless you really like the style in the module, but it just didn't go well with what I was doing in my campaign. And then the last picture, I believe, as well, is one of an android. There's a medical android in there, and I always love this picture. Take a look at it. And I wanted to do something when I did my campaign of kind of updating it. And I was working at the time with a artist by the name of the 13th Warlock. And I said, hey, have you ever, you know, seen this module? And he's like, oh yeah, it's one of my favorites. And I said, well, there's this android in it. Do you think you could do like a modern version of this? And he said, sure, let me take a shot at it. So this is the picture that I came up with for my players. As you can see, it's a really cool take on that old picture, and I love the way it turned out, and my players ended up, you know, convincing her that they were hurt, and they would continue to be hurt, so can she accompany them? And she did, and she picked up other Android programs along the way through the ship, and was able to be a companion with them. When I worked with her, I tried to put in something that I got from one of my favorite ELO module or ELO songs, which is 2099 or 2095, which is off the Time album. And the android in that, all she says is that what you want? So the whole module, you know, if somebody was hurt, they'd say, I'm hurt, you know, and she'd say, you know, they'd say, can you help me? And she'd say, is that what you want? So it kind of got as a running joke with us. And eventually, obviously, her vocabulary could improve as her programs learn the standard language. But anyway, that was fun. And that's another wrinkle if you have an Android or want to use an Android in there, because you can find them throughout the ship, and I kind of populated them around as well. So, you know, that's another cool thing in there. There's some cool pictures as well of monsters that you fight called veggie pygmies. The veggie pygmies are really fun, and one of the things I did with them, I took their spears, which are archaic in the module, but I said that they had taken scrap from the ship's metal and made spear tips with them, which gave them increased damage, made them very, very deadly, and the players did not like running into veggie pygmies by the end of it. But anyway, that takes you through a lot of the artwork and stuff that's going to be in the module. I think the last picture in the module as well, or one of them that you're going to see, is the expulsion of the characters in a bullet getting thrown out of the ship by robots. Take a look. This is a very, very famous picture by Jeff D. And I love Jeff's work, especially in these modules. He does some great androids. Take a look at those. I think his comic book style really lended itself to what was going on in this module. So I think some of his work is some of my favorite. Nevertheless, that's the artwork in it. And then I'll get into the specifics of how I ran this module, just as kind of my DM notes. Like I said, I've taken massive notes. It took me, I ran this over the course of 3 or 4 weeks with my players. So it was probably around between 15 and 20 hours, I think we probably spent gaming back and forth on this. And by the time you get to 15 to 20 hours on this, I think the characters are going to be done with dealing with this ship. So that's something to keep in mind, because it is so massive. You know, take a look at one of the ship sections. So these sections are huge, and there's a lot going on in them. They're locked down by one of the mysteries of the ship, which are going to be different colored key cards. You're going to have to collect those through the course of the module to open specific doors, and they're all different colors, and then people are going to have them on them and be able to open up specific things in specific places. If you allow the characters, in my opinion, to just go willy-nilly where they want to in this ship, it's going to become problematic. The first level of the ship, which you go into, is the most detailed. And I say detailed, and it's really not. They don't give you really a lot of description blocks. So a lot of the stuff you're going to have to make up on the fly or write your own stuff down on, which is what I did. And then I kind of petered off as I went through the ship, just trying to get out of it by the time you're on level 6 or level 7 of it, before you get thrown out of the ship. Because you get kind of a ship fatigue as you go through this module. And you've got to kind of keep that stuff up. But I think, again, by 20 hours or so, people are ready to be done with S3 and just be out of here, take what goods that they have found, and then kind of translate them in your own world. If you want to, you could say that the ship is holding that power and has those charges, but charges and stuff for anything that you take out of the ship fails very quickly outside of it. If you don't want them walking around with laser blasters, and they might have 20 or 30 shots, and they could disintegrate people or stuff like that. And that's one of the things you find with the lasers as well in this. It's kind of a I don't know, if you kind of got to reverse engineer it. They're going to do a certain amount of damage, and then that damage is going to be either added to or subtracted from by the AC. So if you have an AC of 7, it's all off of a base 0. If you shoot a character with a laser or with an AC 7, you're going to add 7 points, because 7 is 7 higher than 0. If the AC is -2, you're going to subtract 2. So it's a neat way to do it, but it becomes kind of accounting for the DM that you're going to have to take into effect. That slows the game down a little bit as well. And like I said, you can take the players through and have them explore it. It's going to be very hard to build if you're using miniatures. If people are trying to map it, it's difficult as well, because it's circular, and it's going to make it very difficult to have somebody hand map it. So one of what I did with this is I just kind of put in a series of encounters the way I wanted the characters to find things or do things through the course of the module. So I could walk them through it. It still gives them the opinion to go left, right, or something like that. But it also allowed me to do encounters in room sections when I wanted them to hit it. I think that made it so much easier, and it allowed the characters to still feel like they're exploring, but you get them to the places and the things that they need to explore without just going through room after room after room of, let's say, crew quarters or something like that. And then you also get to describe the ambiance when you try to take them, because certain areas of the ship are lit, some are dimly lit, some are brightly lit, and you kind of have to describe the halls, and I put lights on the floors and ceiling and try to get stuff I took from science fiction movies of interiors of spaceships and give the feel of that in the metal and the way that the lights worked and so forth and so on. And then also give them the access to find certain things when they need to find certain things. And that's the way I ran it, because otherwise you could spend just countless hours trying to explain to the characters how to get from place to place, or where they are, or they just never get the card that they need, or they never get to the place that they need to find access to the other levels, or you don't find the NPCs, or you don't fight the robots that you need to fight. That having said, that is how I played it. The bulk of this adventure is going to be in level 1. And then it's kind of a run and gun through the rest of the adventure. Second level is just kind of an open area where you've got to deal with the intellect devourer. And then you go into the botanical gardens on the next level, level 3, which is, and it's one level of that where you're going to have to deal with, you can start dealing with the froghemoths and the other things that are down inside this, biosphere. And then around it, they're going to be like nightclubs and stuff like that, where I put a lot of new androids in. And then again, you're going to go into engineering and stuff below that. And by the time they get to those particular areas in cargo, I think they're ready to go. Just, can we get out of this ship? Because you're kind of trapped in it. I had the doors operate every 10 hours. You can get in or out, and people are trying to get out of this ship because they can't cut their way out or get out any other way. So they just find the way down to where the bullet is being housed by the security robots, and then they'll be expelled there. In my opinion, it's a neat module. It gives you a different flair, but it is going to wear on your players very quickly once they're into it and the cool factor starts to wear off. So keep that in mind. Don't keep them in this module too long or they'll start to dislike it, I think, in kind of the ways that it's going to limit what they do. And one of the things that I know as a DM is you don't want to limit players because they start to feel railroaded or they start to feel like they're trapped in something. They just want to get out and do something else. So keep that in mind. It's got a lot of cool creatures in it. A lot of cool science fiction wrinkles that you can expand on, and I have a lot in my notes. But otherwise, I think it's a good play. If I was going to go, 1 to 5, I'd probably rate it maybe 3.5 on just playability, and 4 for creativity. And again, great early artwork in this one, and the handout or the ability to show players a lot of artwork is great. And it gives them a good visual of what's going on. If you want to set it in that very 70s feel. Otherwise, if you're updating it, you'd want to pull some new artwork and stuff for interior ships or stuff like that off the internet, which is very easy to do these days. So that's it, S3. I hope you've enjoyed my review of it. Again, if you want these notes that I did, hey, they're yours. Just give me an email and I'll send them off to you. Again, forgive my spelling mistakes because I'm just noting things. I don't really care what I'm doing. And you might get names and stuff of characters within my campaign and you'll have to kind of work those out. But anyway, Barrier Peaks, you can have it if you want to see how I did it. And otherwise, as always, thank you for listening. Please subscribe if you can, spread the channel, and great gaming.